Mahakaruna and the zero view of Zen. The word Maha means great in Sanskrit, and Karuna means, in a surface sense, kindness or compassion, but the deeper senses are profounder than what would be suggested by the English translation. The Pali word for it is Kaluna. That has, in terms of ideophonetics and symbolism, when written in Brahmi, a deeper sense than is apparently conveyed by the Karuna sound. So the concept of Mahakaruna appears prominently in the Buddhist studies and Buddhist traditions. The word Maha or Mahas also occurs in, or at least a similar word occurs in the Vedic and Upanishadic traditions with as a sound similar to the Bhurbhuva Swaha. Those sounds sometimes strung at the end of Bhurbhuva Swaha Mahas. So it had a deeper sense in the ancient Upanishadic tradition as well, referring perhaps to the brightness beyond and so forth. So, Karuna is not the ordinary notion of kindness, and it is not necessarily devoid of the ordinary notion either. I would even argue that it is uh, kind of entirely different from the ordinary idea of kindness, particularly because in the ordinary idea of kindness, the awareness is traveling outward and binding, identifying with an outward object. Say, I'm kind to a goldfish in an aquarium. My awareness has entirely gone out of my frame. It is upon the phenomenon of the goldfish in the aquarium, and the awareness is on the plane of I like that form, I'd like to preserve that form, um, trying to hold the Augenblick, the trying to hold that instant in passing phenomenon. That is different from the authentic idea of Karuna, or identifying with, in that sense, in the usual worldly sense of Karuna, it is just an identification with the phenomenon that seems good, and one is attempting to preserve phenomenon, to keep time from flowing, so to speak. That is different from the profounder idea, and we'll discuss the profounder sense. Idea, that is Kaluna or Karuna, is devoid of a world scan sense because it is a view of that which is beyond it, the perception, not just a view in the usual sense of the term. It is that which is beyond. It is found in the beyond. The alchemist would say Mercury is found in the beyond. The Karuna sense has a property that the granularity of scan that one might associate with spatial senses, which appears as the atomic senses, is absent in the Karuna sense. It is almost like uh, mercury. Mercury is like smooth liquid. That is why I said the sound Kaluna has association with liquid, uh, has a profounder sense than the sound Karuna in Sanskrit. Um, Kaluna occurs in Pali, and Pali was the language in which the Buddha taught. In Sanskrit, the sound is associated sound is Karuna, but there the sound is R. R occurs in the word sense of granularity, vector, granular. There are two R's, granular. So that is because R has to do with vectorial, outward vectorial scan sense transformations. It is different from the ordinary notion of kindness in that the ordinary notion of kindness evokes a sense of airiness. It One might argue it has to do with the elemental senses getting transmuted um, from the gross to the finer. It could well also be because of the outward vectorial spatial scans. That sense of the awareness falling into space is not what is needed. The awareness has to hold the zero, hold on own frame thus and beyond. The frame vectors, which is the body form, evolves on the zero artifact, on the n order zero artifact. It evolves on the shunyata. Shunyata is not to be translated as void in the usual sense of the term. It is the mathematical artifact which I describe as the zero artifact. It can evolve in spaces and in spaces in directions which are of an n minus one dimensional nature. The physics of vector space transformations and symmetry implying alteration of the order of zero. Now, if assume the awareness were strictly established at the zero of the zeroth order zero, that particular awareness is unaffectable because whatever vector set it is holding, for a transformation of it to occur, the for assume a spatial transformation needs to occur, its location needs to change. The awareness needs to withdraw to a higher dimensional space to symmetrically alter vectors. When assume I am pushing a book or a laptop, my awareness has withdrawn into a higher order space, and the zero space transformation of the laptop and the DNA pocket of my own form are occurring in a symmetric sense, and the symmetry occurs because the awareness is being held in a higher order zero. So there's a generation of a higher order zero awareness when a spatial transformation needs to occur. So it is impossible to move somebody in a zeroth order zero perception, move the space around an individual in a zeroth order zero observation. Sometimes in traditional martial arts, they demonstrate rooting. It is different from just an individual standing there. Even if one attempts to push, it seems impossible to move the individual. It is the awareness that gets rooted in a zero sense. It is not, of course, the absolute zeroth order zero rooting anything. But there is my mic just a second. Yes, it was not. Okay. Okay. Regarding grounding, uh, so that phenomenon is there. The grounding of a form, which is awareness driven. Some of these people who are able to demonstrate it are not able to wield the ability while in a real situation, in a fight, because the awareness is going awry, while it is not able to stabilize itself in a real world fight situation. And right here, assume a gunshot. The act of the gunshot transforming own space necessarily needs the awareness withdrawing to a higher order zero through the swastika operator and generating a symmetric vectorial transformation. Established in the zero of the zeroth order zero, such a transformation is not feasible. when the awareness is established there. One of the properties of this Mahakaruna or Mahakaluna is that it is devoid of space scan sense, devoid of a sense of outward vectorial expansions, as if dense mercury, as if it fills the whole of the space of perception. If somebody were to shake the awareness, one would have to have the awareness that is shaken space, so to speak. It has to take outward vectorial scans. It has to process uh, DNA cycles, codes that which would be interpreted as forms of thought, forms of the world, and so on. None of that is present when the Mahakalina is established. The sound has associations with the sense of the mercurial beyond. Oh, it is not a human emotion either. One can stay in that sense in war and shelling out destruction in the battlefield. For form is understood as not eternal, and when the universe brings forth the activity of war, then war aligns with the nature of activity of the universe. It is the universe that has determined the mode of functioning there, not the individual necessarily. I'm putting forth an argument against the ideas of war is good or bad. Uh, the core point of the slide is that even in the midst of a war, the Kaluna sense can be extremely strong. Situated in that sense, uh, when one fights, one is not disrupted in own form, thought space, nor does the disruption of forms of the world affect the individual. For, for the soul or the awarenesses are not forms, the Heart Sutra says. So, the aggregates are devoid of the awareness in it. They are vectorial geometries that are held. And in war or whatever, what is being destroyed out is only the vectorial scans held by different awarenesses. So that because that knowledge exists, that horrifying sense of whatever is theoretically absent. The Gita says, describing meditation in chapter 6, Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam, Thare Achalam Sthira, Samprekshya Nasigagram Swam, Dishascha Anavalokaye. It means the body, head, and the neck in samam. Samam, the word they'll translate as balanced, equilibrium in a straight line, and so on. This word samam has the same root with samyama. Samyama takes to the 0 point view. That is the view of the beyond. So it is understood, the form is understood, own body form is understood there in the beyond. Dhare means that samyama has dharana, dhyana, and samadhi together as per the Yoga Sutras. So the word dharen occurs here, which is a dynamic state of meditation, a dynamic pondering. And the pondering, because it leads to the zero view, it becomes achalam. Achalam means without movement. Sthiram means steady. I said the word sthiram suggests entering the zero space in Yoga Sutras. And that idea is suggested by the Vyasa Bhasha of the Yoga Sutras. That sthiram has to do with entering the zero space and abiding there. Sampreksha. It can, on the surface sense, be read as viewing, Sam has again the samyama notion there, idea there, and prekshya means to see, but it can also mean to project. Samprekshya, nasikagram. Nasikagram can mean tip of the nose. Tip of the nose has to do with a 0 point because the forms that appear has to do with mappings of a underlying mathematical artifact. That which is the 0 point at the base of the spine, below the base of the spine, is the same as the 0 point that is perceived by the awareness at the tip of the nose. Uh, Nasigagram can also, agram means peak. Nasika means nose. It can also means na asi, that which is not existent, that which is beyond reality. And the agram in the sense, agram can mean peak, root, all those things. Swam means self. Dishas means directions. Cha means and then anavalokayan means not observing, non-observing, not observing the directions. The awareness is not going outward into the directional senses, the outward scans. This is the state of meditation that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, the state of meditation is a state that arises toward the uh, as one progresses toward the later stages, even perhaps. Um, for the initial stages involve world action more in alignment with own dharma, and from there one progresses to the state of meditation greatly. I'm not saying early stages there is no meditation, but you know where the weight falls. So this aligns with the idea of being absorbed in the zero thought or zero of the zero thought or zero. There is no directional scans there. And the true mathematical geometry and what the geometry unveils of the form, the way the form arises, uh, and so forth, uh, can only be understood by the mathematical view of things, which is not understood without understanding the zero, the shunyata, the zero thought of zero. Shunyata being a mathematical structure, which is why the Heart Sutra says understand form in terms of shunyata. Form and shunyata are not dual, are not different things. Jedi meditation guide. I speak of a form of meditation in the stage 4 of the Jedi meditation training manual. I'll put a link to that in the next slide. So I give the term kindness to that section, and I'll read out what were written there. Just a second. So you can download it from http://bit.ly/zerodynamiz, bit.ly/zerodynamis. It'll open the internet archive link to the PDF. I describe different stages to progress in this particular document. But again, it doesn't mean you cannot explore an idea in a later stage, earlier on in the path. But it is as a map and an outline for progress, suggested that it would be generally good to put the weight on earlier stages, on what is described to be done in earlier stages while in the earlier stages of the path. So here I write on the right side of the screen, you'll see, evoke a sense of loving kindness inside. One peculiar thing about this is that sense should not have an object. The awareness should not fall into the world sense and object sense and lose own frame and the 0 point thus. It arises from by the force, I mean what is beyond. It arises from the force with an ability to destroy any evil. The sense of loving kindness, the Platonic feeling of it, is the object of awareness, and the feeling itself is not targeted at any object. Hold it in the center of the cross in your heart. Uh, by that statement, I also suggest that it is found at the center space. Center of the heart space is the center of the chakra space, which is why you'll find the cross suggesting that center. The Celtic cross suggests the center of a circle, in fact. If you visualize a cross there thus, and you uh, visualize a silver cross there, and attempt to sense the feeling there, you'll find the sense that I describe here. And then you allow it to expand a bit, expand it in the awareness. That is, the awareness is holding it better. Expand it a bit more, step by step. This can be done in different stages over days or weeks or months. And then expand it to outside of the body in such a way that it fills the body and expands a bit outside the body. Then further as if it fills the entire room space one is in, and so on until it fills the entire universe of own perception. Take your time to understand this and do it. By experimenting doing this, you'll understand the way to do this. The way to do this meditation. Do not hurry along or hurry on this path because even if you achieve this particular thing, it is virtually immortality and powers like and beyond what the Templar Knights had. Uh, and also, it is going beyond the universe because that beyond the universe perception has entirely filled own perception. One can, if in the initial stages one cannot sense the beyond, one can experiment meditating on the Platonic feeling of it, of that which is described as kindness, without losing own frame. Do not let the mind fall into an outer object or any idea in the world. The object of meditation is the Platonic feeling of kindness itself. And one advantage is that uh, if any phenomenon were to make you feel bad or to somehow put your awareness in an unideal state, it has to shake you into those states. But if the awareness is trained to hold a Platonic state such as this, it is impossible for an outward phenomenon to shake you. Like when people want to make you feel bad, assume it is your own awareness that has to hold the feeling bad state. What if it were holding an infinite Platonic state? It is impossible to be shaken because it is not anything outside that is shaking you or shaking one. Uh, Again, this there are both visible and invisible forces that can want to um, make an individual feel bad. So the individual gains immunity to all those attacks. If somebody wanted to do anything negative to you, it is the awareness that has to hold the negative state. If your awareness is so trained that it holds that infinite Platonic state, it is impossible to be affected. I was listening to a talk on the uh, on that book named The Law of One by an entity that identifies itself with the name Ra. There's that book, Law of One Ra. Don't take anything for absolute truths or anything, but you might find interesting ideas in different sources. So in that book, um, Ra, it is probably not the Egyptian god Ra, but an entity. It is using the code name or whatever, Ra, possibly uh, an alien. Describes the way these negative entities function. So they leverage an opening in our brain mind, something that makes us feel bad, and anything that is a vulnerability, using the negative forces or ideas or whatever devices or whatever, they'll keep evoking that uh, thing, that point of vulnerability. And from there, the person will respond negatively. If a negative entity is seen, how does the awareness work? The normal response is anger. You don't want to hold a Platonic kind state. You want to meet it with anger. Uh, and then what happens, as per the law of one book, apparently, is the individual that is under attack polarizes negatively, and that benefits the entity. It is polarizing through anger, aversion, hatred, pain, trauma that is evoked, and all those things in alignment with the negative. All those are negative ideas. So the entity gains a firmer uh, grip on the field. Uh, that is how it functions, apparently. Um, Sometimes when we are suggested hold a Platonic field, our mind thinks, no, I do not want to hold a field of Platonic kindness against this thing. I want to fight it. I want to meet it with anger. That seems the way to do it. But the thing is, one is not holding kindness for that entity specifically. One might even produce a kind thought. Assume a ghost attack. If you settle your awareness down, really what happened, and you can ask the ghost what happened, why are you so distraught, uh, then that diffuses the entity because it can no longer find its feed. Uh, it can no longer find a space of hatred where it can exist, where it can enter. And that is not a weak kind of kindness because the awareness is holding its frame. It is dangerous to that entity. It will destroy that entity. That is why it will leave. It is afraid of that positive polarization. It will lose its ability to function. Energy is everything. So, um, in that sense, also, this is like forming a shield. Um, and again, this is a Jedi training manual, so to speak. So, assume a war situation. One has to be extremely crystal clear in the awareness. One cannot fight in a state of uh, madness, anger, where one is stretching in just anger. Trained fighters do not do that. When a difficult situation arises, a trained boxer will put his guard up. An untrained boxer or an untrained fighter will start wildly swinging his arms and get knocked out. So that stability is needed for fierce action, even uh, forceful action. It is necessary to keep a logical state in difficult situations. It is necessary to function in a state of flow, a state of a state of flow possibly has something to do with um, a, a, a level of zero plane awareness. When reading that document, remember you'd probably derive more by patiently working through each of the stages described, than hurrying along to perhaps the final stage described by anything. Each of the stages do have a form of meditation and activity and so forth involved. Perhaps you could take up stage one and stage two together, but there needs to be a level of, level-headed patience, stability in the work, abiding with the effort for a great amount of time. Regarding stage four, remember, it is not any kind of thought process that takes your thought into an outward worldly object or makes you lose the center of your frame, makes you lose the sense of, um, being centered in own frame. In the Buddhist meditations as well, if you take the Satipatthana Sutta, Mahasadipatthana Sutta, it says observing the abides in own form, observing formation of own form. That is, abides in own body form, observing the way the breath forms own body form. That observation can take different hues in different states of awareness. In a state of awareness, it can be the mathematical perception of it. So, why I said that is to say one has to abide in own form, hold the frame, and not fall away into an outward dimensional scan sense. If you think about what we just discussed as a light version of the Mahakaruna idea, and right here in the light edition, the awareness were in a fourth order zero view because the heart space of the what has been described. Actually, it is ultralight and nanolight and feather light in opposition to the real deep. In Mahakaruna, all vectorial scans are zeroed. That which is labeled Mahakaruna appears as all-pervading, mercury-dense, destructive, devoid of spatial vector senses, impenetrable beyond the worlds, granting unaffectability, freedom from world vector scans. One cannot be shaken in that stage by anything physics or ideal plane phenomenon. Of course, the ideal plane is also related to physics and mathematics. The Heart Sutra says that the usual sense of uh, worldly sense of world phenomenon ideas are again vectorial views. That which is beyond is not physics of the appeared world. So that which is as dense as MERVURY fills. Is that the same as mercury or is that a typo? To quote the Backstreet Boys, who am I? Who's to say? Don't know exactly what it